So let's see now. Let's go ahead and introduce Laura Robles is going to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, George. I have Sergeant Jason Antley of the Medford Police Department's Livability Team. He will be presenting updates on the team's progress within the Medford community. The fully staffed division was created in 2019 and is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for residents by tackling livability issues throughout the city, such as housing and employment. This is accomplished by enforcement and fostering relationships with community stakeholders, including nonprofits and faith-based organizations. Sergeant Antley was born and raised in Medford. He is married to Kim Antley, his wife of 27 years, and he has 3 adult children. Jason has worked for the Medford Police Department since August of 2002. Jason spent most of his career in the patrol division and was promoted to sergeant in 2013. In January of 2023, he was selected to head the livability team. He enjoys volunteering at church, spending time with his family, reading, and playing guitar. Welcome.
I have to set my phone up so that I can keep the timer. I want to make sure that I don't go over. And I gotta apologize up front too. I don't have any. I didn't know how oh yeah, it's good. It's good. Can you is there a you have a PowerPoint? There we go. There we go. The Medford Livability Team. So just a couple of things of housekeeping. Judge Lorenzo Mejia, it's good to see you again, sir. It's been a long time. Yeah, good to see you, Your Honor. Um, just a couple of things I just want to like put out there to the group, and that is this. I realize that this topic that we're going to discuss, or I'm going to discuss, and you guys can have questions about, can tend to be politically charged. It can elicit kind of some, some visceral responses, and I get that. Um, that is not my intent here today. My intent is to just to give you some information, but I do want you to know that I'm sensitive to that. And um, in that vein, if you have questions, don't hold your questions. If you have questions, just shoot that hand up and ask questions. Even if you think, man, I don't want to ask him that. He's not going to like this question. Even if it's an opposing viewpoint, I welcome that truly. So if you have questions about this, please feel free to ask those during the presentation. So the livability team, before we get started and get down the path too far, I think it's important that we discuss some terms that you're going to hear me use, okay? These terms, BCGW, that's Bear Creek Greenway, that's all that stands for. And the Bear Creek Greenway is an actual designated area that is along the Bear Creek. It's mostly on the bike path side, if you're familiar with the bike path that goes through Medford. That's where most of it is, but it's actually on both sides of the creek. So the Bear Creek Greenway, downtown corridor. There is a business section of Medford that is bordered by Jackson on the north border, the Bear Creek, Oakdale, basically, and then 10th Street. Those are the borders of the downtown section. And that will become important later when we're talking about the exclusion. So the exclusion is a term that you're going to hear me use. And what that is referring to is a civil order that we issue to people when they do a certain bad act in a particular area, like for instance, the downtown corridor. Usually the way this works out is like someone's drinking in public or they're being disorderly. And so we charge them with disorderly conduct, or they're in possession of drugs, or they're using marijuana, or they've committed a theft in a particular area. We will then say, you are excluded from this area for 90 days. They have an opportunity to challenge the exclusion. They can still proceed through the area. It doesn't mean it's like carte blanche. You can never come in this area for any reason whatsoever. That is not the way it works. They can still enter the area. They can pass through. They can seek services. They can seek employment. There's a lot of things that they can participate in First Amendment their First Amendment rights, despite having that exclusion. But what they can't do is go back into the area and just hang around and smoke and joke and not engage in any of those exemptions from the exclusion. If they do, then what will happen is will be arrested for trespass. Municipal beds. The city of Medford contracts with the Jackson County Jail. We have 20 beds that belong to the city of Medford. Judge Virginia Greer is the one who really controls those beds, but she works very closely with us on the livability team to use those beds to their maximum efficiency. And I'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later. And then outreach, you're going to hear me mention the process of outreach. That's just us trying to connect people that we're interacting with, whether it's in the parks or the greenway, downtown, wherever we run across them, trying to connect them with services. Okay. Any questions about any of those forms? All right. This is the mission of the Medford Livability Team. The mission is that we want to improve community livability by reducing criminal behavior, right? We're the cops, right? That's what we're supposed to do. That's what you guys pay us money to do, right? You pay us to reduce criminal behavior. How do we do that? We do that by taking enforcement action. Nothing that I tell you up here should make you think that we're not arresting people. We arrest a lot of people. But there's a difference between what we do and why we do it, and maybe like the patrol division and why they do what they do. And again, I will talk about that here in a minute. But so we're not only doing the enforcement piece, but we also have these relationships with service providers where we're trying to get people connected with services and get them to a point where they can make better decisions for themselves and identify long-term solutions for the issues that they're experiencing. We kind of play a couple of different games in the livability team. One of those is the short game. What does the short game look like? Well, the short game looks like me on the Greenway being underneath the 10th Street Bridge, and there is somebody that's laying half naked, knotted off on fentanyl. They have nowhere to stay. They're dirty. They've been out on the Greenway for days, weeks, months. There's an immediate need there, right? The immediate need is we need to get this person to a place where they're safe, where they can be in shelter. So that's the short game. And then with that same person, eventually what we're hoping to do is get that person to a point of sobriety, get them, oftentimes there's like what we call a dual diagnosis, where they have substance use issues and mental health issues. And part of what we're doing is trying to figure out, is the mental health related to the substance abuse, or did one precipitate the other? And trying to do that. And that's where we'll use the municipal beds. But once we have that person to a place where they're safe, then we can start outreaching them, bringing resources to them, connecting them with our community partners, and trying to come up with a more long-term solution rather than just keeping this person in jail or keeping this person at the it's called Road Retreat Crossings, but you guys might know it as the urban campground. And I'll just refer to it as the campground, because that's not really what the campground is designed to do. It's not designed to house people just forever. So that's the long-term solution that we're talking about. We talked about this just real briefly, but in 2017, a bunch of complaints started coming before the city council about bullying and intimidating kind of behavior on the Greenway. In a nutshell, the city council came to the police department and said, this is your job, fix it. And so we came back to them with a proposal like, hey, we would like to put together a livability team that is dedicated to dealing with issues on the Greenway and the downtown and the parks area. And then also like code enforcement issues. This is how many people we need. This is how much money we need. And the city council voted on it. They said, yep, go for it. Here's your money. So in 2019, the police department founded the livability team. It started off with 3 police officers, 1 code enforcement officer, and a record specialist. Okay. Today, the team has expanded. The city council had voted to expand the people that were a part of the team. So now the team has 1 sergeant, that's me, and 1 corporal. We have 6 police officers, 3 full-time CSOs, a full-time record specialist, and 2 part-time CSOs. One of the really cool things about our team is one of my partners over here, Vicki Armstrong. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Vicki, but she's a full-time CSO with us, but she has a very special designation. Her designation is the Community Engagement Liaison. So what her specialty is that she has run in the service provider circles for years. So she has tons of relationships with these different agencies, whether it's Options, ARC, On Track. She has those relationships. And so the people that oftentimes are in our municipal beds, so they've been arrested, they're sitting on a municipal bed, our judge can hold them there for X amount of time, depending on what the crime was. But even for a trespass, we can hold people for 5 to 7 days, depending on whether there's a whole bunch of legalese in there, but we can hold people on these muni beds. Let's just say that for the sake of argument. So then what will happen is Vicki will go in there and start trying to build this holistic picture of who this person is, what their needs are, and how we can help them. So it's a great process, and it's extremely effective. I don't know the exact number of the amount of people that we've been able to connect with a long-term solution, but it's been several in the last 12 months that she's been with the team, where we're either reuniting people with family in other locations, or we are getting them into a more permanent housing solution where they have the stability to start the recovery process. There's a lot of things that she's able to do with the folks that we're interacting with. Any questions so far? No? Okay. This is just a short list of our community partners. I'm sorry, it's probably really hard to read from there, but this really is a lot of what we're doing. Some of these people we're interacting with on multiple times a day, like Rogue Retreat. We interact with Rogue Retreat, first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock when they open up. We want to know how many spots they have open in their campground. They are calling us for help during the day for maybe somebody needs a ride to a doctor's office, or maybe somebody is in crisis, and they will call the livability team to go in there and talk with the person. Why would they call the livability team instead of just calling dispatch? Well, this goes back to the difference between what patrol does and what the livability officers do. So patrol officers, I'll just paint the picture for you. When a patrol officer comes to work in the morning and they go out to their car and they get logged on, as soon as they open up that computer and log onto it, up pops several calls that are already pending from the previous shift that they did not get handled. So their job is they need to start going through those calls and knocking those calls off. And those are going to be cold calls that are low level, like theft of the lawn gnome, or, somebody, peeled out in front of my house, or things like that. We're not talking like crimes of the century here. And so they're dealing with those calls that are already pending for them. And then there's more calls coming in throughout the day that are low level calls that they're having to deal with. And then on top of that, they have all of the calls that are being dispatched directly to them via radio that are hot calls in progress. So like domestics, assaults, all of that type of stuff. So they are absolutely inundated with calls for service all day long. The special thing about our team is that we don't respond to calls for service. We will respond to calls for service. I'm not saying that we don't do that, but dispatch does not send us stuff. That was something that I asked for, and I asked for strongly, because we have a job to do, and it's very difficult to do that job when we're constantly having to answer calls for service on the radio. What is that job? Getting people to their service provider meetings, getting people to into shelter, working with people. Like just yesterday, we had a guy that came here because his son was in jail on some Measure 11 cases, and he came here. Really, he had nothing except the wheelchair and the backpack. He came from out of town. He wanted to see his son. He got stranded here, and so he came to us for help. And so we were able to get him a shower. We were able to get him a safe place to stay for the night. We were able to get his clothes washed. We were able to get him a plane ticket. We were able to contact his family back in Denver, Colorado, where he's from, and confirm that, yeah, you know this guy. Yes, we're willing to receive him. Yes, he belongs here. And he wanted to go back there because that's where he's from. And we're able to coordinate things like that. But if we're constantly having to answer the radio, it's very difficult to do that. Um, we have really good relationships with a lot of these partners. Some of these partners we don't interact with on a daily basis, but some of them we do. We're very close with our community partners, and it's this list of people that really allows us to do the things that we're trying to do day in and day out. Connect is a monthly meeting, and the idea of Connect is that. Is anybody familiar with the term siloing? Are you familiar with that term? Okay, so some of you are familiar with that term. That is a real problem in the service provider world, because a lot of I'm just like giving you the world according to Jason Antley here for a second, but a lot of it's grant funded. And so it's like, well, I've got my little piece of the pie here, and I don't want you intruding on my piece of the pie, because if you take part of my pie, then I'm not going to get as much money the next time this grant comes around. So there can be a lot of walls that are built. And Connect is a monthly meeting where we bring a lot of the service providers to one location. It's at the police department. And we kind of get everybody around the same table, and we all talk and we all figure things out. We all work through problems out together. And this is the acronym. It's a collaborative outreach, navigating network, empower, community, and transformation. And the collaboration part of it, we're just trying to work with each other. We're trying to figure out what that looks like, how we can interact and be effective as a group. The outreach is, we're not only just outreaching the potential clients, but we're also trying to outreach the other service providers that are maybe a little bit difficult to work with. And we're trying to build those bridges between our agency. I don't know if you know this, but there's sometimes can be a little bit of stigma attached to working with the police department. And sometimes people are very, it's true though. It's true. Yeah. It's not as, where's my pickle guy? It was not as good as the pickle jokes, but it is true. There can be a lot of stigma attached to it, especially in the addiction recovery circles. So we're trying to build those bridges and create those relationships of trust. Navigating, if any of you are familiar with the service provider world, it can be a very difficult place to try to work through. There's just so many rules, and this person over here can only do so much because their agency doesn't allow them to transport people. Well, now we got to find somebody to transport this person from point A to point B to get him to this other place. It can be a real mess. It can be very difficult with policies and procedures. So it behooves us, and really the expert at this is Vicky over here. She is the subject matter expert for figuring out what these different agencies and entities will do and absolutely will not do. Where's that kind of gray area that sometimes people are willing to kind of push the boundaries of what they're allowed to do, and for the benefit of the client. And so we're trying to understand how all of these different components of the system work so that we can better serve the people that are experiencing homelessness or addiction issues or mental health issues. The networking, it just goes to trying to pull down those walls and trying to make it less silo-y, I guess would be my way of putting it. Less, this is my piece of the pie and don't come over here. Empowering, just trying to share that knowledge with each other so that, so that we don't create our own little silo of knowledge. Like we're the only ones that can do this. That's not true. We just happen to have a vested interest in doing it. And so we've taken it upon ourselves as a department to invest the time, energy, and effort to gain this body of knowledge, but we're willing to share it with anybody who's wanting to gain them. So the community, it's Medford, local service providers for sure, and especially those folks that are experiencing homelessness and they're struggling with mental health issues and addiction issues. I mean, they're a part of the community. And then transformation, pulling it all together. And we're trying to, again, kind of going back to the mission statement, as a community of service providers trying to come together and develop these long-term solutions. It really doesn't do any good. It's kind of the old, Give a man a fish and he can eat today, teach a man to fish and feed himself. Well, it's kind of the same idea. Like we can just give someone a place to stay at the urban campground, right? But that doesn't help them long term. If that's where it ends, inevitably they will be back out on the street. It will happen. So taking a person and tracking with that person and building that relationship with that person over the course of time, that really is what's going to generate those long-term solutions and get that person's buy-in. This is kind of parenthetical, but I think I have time to talk about this. A lot of the folks that we're dealing with on the Greenway, they don't know what it means to have like a real love relationship with someone. Like they were raised by wolves. They have been involved in criminal behavior for most of their lives. It was reinforced and perpetuated by their families. And so to think that you can just hand somebody a job application and say, here, fill this out, you need this. Or to think you can just, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get it done. Well, that works for somebody who knows how to do that. But I mean, a lot of the folks we're dealing with, they barely have a fifth, sixth grade education. They bounced around from house to house. I mean, it was very unstable and unsettling for them as children. I mean, they really don't know how to navigate life. And so even a lot of what Vicky's doing is just helping these guys with life skills, showing them, okay, this is how you set an alarm in your phone. And this is how you get up on time. It takes 15 minutes. Things that you and we don't even think about it, right? It's just a part of our daily life that I need to get up an hour early to make it to work, right? That's just not the way that they think. So trying to find those long-term solutions and change that behavior and really kind of change the way that they think about themselves and the world around them. And then I threw this in, less substance abuse and less unrecognized and untreated mental health disorders. It absolutely equals less crime, without a doubt. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that nobody on the Greenway is clean as far as drugs and alcohol, but I've never met one. Every single person that I've met in a state of homelessness is a substance user. Is it possible that there's one out there that doesn't use substances? Yeah, it's possible, but not very likely. It's just synonymous with the lifestyle. So those things, mental health, undiagnosed and untreated mental health disorders, and then substance abuse, man, when they start mixing together, it absolutely causes communities to be less safe. So that's our goal. Questions?
You're open to questions. Please make sure before you give your question, you have a microphone. Besides the Zoom folks, we're starting to record all the meetings, so we want to make sure it gets the audio.
I'd like to make sure everyone got their credit card back. Anybody that didn't get their credit card back, good. No,
Yes, ma'am.
You gave me cash. You don't get a credit card back.
I just want to say I so appreciate this program. I think it's already we've seen positive impacts in our community from it. So thank you for doing this work, all of you. I also just want to ask a question if you run across children on the Greenway.
Yeah, we sure do occasionally. And believe it or not, it's actually there's no crime in that. The crime starts to occur when there's open drug use around the children. DHS has told us in no uncertain terms. I'm not trying to blame her. I mean, it's the way the law is in Oregon. You can be in a state of homelessness and raise your kids. And but yes, we do find families on the Greenway, and we do everything we can to get them into shelter and those kinds of options if they're willing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sergeant Antley, Angela Durant.
Yeah.
This is just a comment. I wanted to thank you for your realistic empathy that you're expressing today and the balanced approach that you come with. And just keep up the good work. It's come so far, and the work that you do. And Vicky's a diamond, so a unicorn.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sergeant Antley,
Oh,
on the other side of the table, sorry. I just am wondering if you all are anticipating any impacts of the route service changes for RVTD that are going into effect in early September?
No, but actually, I think that might be a good question to punt to Vicky because she actually works with RVTD.
I think that I am concerned that there are going to be impacts for sure. Sergeant Antley discussed one of the major complexities for folks receiving services is their ability to get to a place. And so anything that's happening that's reducing the transportation and for them to get there is going to be huge. And so, yes, I am concerned. What it's going to look like, I don't know. And I think the other side of that coin is employment. A lot of folks rely solely on the bus system for employment. And so that becomes one more barrier to them being successful at having that agency.
Thank you.
So, excuse me, I'm assuming that there are some people on the Greenway that don't appreciate your presence or the services being offered. So in terms of percentages, what percentage might that be? And what are the alternative actions taken based on that?
You know, that's a great question. And it's a high percent. I mean, we're the cops, right? I mean, I'm not going to say they don't like us, but oftentimes they don't appreciate what we're trying to do. But here's the thing, though. I can't even tell you how many times because here's basically this is my stance. When I find somebody like I described underneath 10th Street Bridge, my heart in the matter as a dad and as just a community member is this is unacceptable. You might be willing to lay here and die and kill yourself with fentanyl, but I am not going to accept that as your. And so we will arrest these people for trespass or prohibited camping or warrants. And you know what? We will do it over and over and over and over. Because what I've found is that when the person's ready, they're ready. And when you have that relationship with them, even though you're taking them to jail, we can still be kind and empathetic and reasonable with them and treat them with respect and treat them with dignity, even if it is the 10th time this month that they're going to jail for trespass. And we can build that relationship with them. And then when they finally do, and a lot of them do, get to a point where they're like, you know what, this stinks. I'm done. I want to do something else. I know you can help me. And so they will come to us. And when they get to that point, all the other times that we've arrested them, they're like, I hate you guys. I don't want to do this. You're not going to help me. I want to use fentanyl till I die. You know, I hear that stuff all the time. But when they get to that point, we're their best friends. And they know that we've tracked with them for like long term. And so it's easier to build, or excuse me, it's easier to build a comprehensive recovery program for them. But a lot of times they don't appreciate that until they get to that point. Did that answer your question? Okay.
We have time for one more question. Mike?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for what you do, what you and your team do.
Of course.
My question is, how do you quantify this problem, and is it getting worse, or are you making headway? When you go home at night, what have you succeeded?
Yes, without a doubt. When I look at the Greenway, what it looks like today as compared to 3 years ago when I took the team over, it is night and day difference. If any of you have been in that section from 10th Street down to Jackson Street, it used to look like a third world country down there. See, I probably shouldn't have said that. That was rude. It looked terrible down there. Tents everywhere, people laying on the ground. I mean, it was just tarps strung up all over the place. People had fireplaces in their tents. I mean, they were there long term. It was bad. And, you know, when we finally took the approach of, okay, well, we've been kind of kid lovish for the last several years, we're going to actually start holding people accountable now. And when we did that, it changed the whole face of what it looked like down there. Reducing calls for service, you know, and just the aesthetics of it, it's night and day. So, and then we do track our numbers. I mean, obviously we track all of our arrest stats and all of that type of stuff. But we also track, I should say, we're starting to track all of our outreach stats and what what people we've engaged with and how they have responded to different outreach possibilities for them. Success is kind of an elusive prey, but if I look at where we're at today as compared to 3 years ago, I'd say we're successful.
All right. Well, before you take off, so one, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. One more round of applause. Okay. So we'll change places here. So we are a member of the Smart Reader program. And if you would please give your autograph right there, we'll get that in the hands of a young smart reader.